Welcome back to Basins and Beer with ESA Analytics. I'm Blue Spikes. Today, I'm going to talk to you about a specific kind of well. It's called a U-turn well. It's a horizontal well that goes out and comes all the way back. It's somewhat unique. It seems to be slowly becoming more common. We've already found 8 of these in Texas, drilled within the last year or two, and I know there are at least 3 that have been drilled in Colorado. So we might be seeing more of these, so we need to start to understand how they're completed, what does that do to production, what does it do in terms of economics. There's a lot to learn about these wells, and now that we're starting to have enough of them in different areas, we can start to evaluate them. The beer I'm going to drink today is called Samuel Adams Old Fezziwig. It's a rich and spiced beer. It's seasonal. I'm in kind of a Christmas mood. It's December, it's cold outside, so I'm going to give this beer a taste. This is what it looks like. It is 5.9% and 25 IBUs. So let's see what that tastes like. Well, I don't think it's the kind of beer you're going to drink too many of, but for a seasonal beer, just a one-off, it's okay. I could probably drink a second if I had to. All right, so let's jump into the presentation here. The basin we're going to focus on in this episode is called the Permian Delaware. So it's in Texas. You may have heard of the Permian. It's kind of the biggest out there. It has more wells than any other, more production. It is an absolutely huge basin. And if you've watched any of the other videos, you know the first thing you should do is load up the map and figure out where you're going. So in this case, we're going to turn on the basins. We're going to go down here into sort of West Texas and a little bit of New Mexico. And this is the Permian Basin, all of this yellow and green. We've broken it out into 4 different sub-basins because there are just so many wells, and these are, again, slightly different geologic provinces in each, slightly different target formations, and different depositional environments. So even though it would be nice to put all the wells into one basin, the fact is it's just not practical. It would impact performance to the point where we think it would be less pleasant to use the application. So it's better if we break it down into these different sub-basins. So in this case, we're going to go over here to the Permian Delaware. So it's mostly in West Texas and then up into southeast New Mexico. So we'll load that in. Again, looking for Permian Delaware. Hit apply. If you are an oil and gas professional and you have a software package like Petra or Kingdom, think about how long it takes to load a project with this many wells in it. In this case, there are 70,000 wells, or over 70,000 wells, 54,000 of them are being loaded in at once. We don't load things like permits and abandoned locations by default. If you wanted to load all of them, you can go over here to the settings and show the undrilled wells. But by default, we show the ones that have actually been drilled, which again reduces how many wells there are, improves the performance, and the other wells aren't usually very interesting, so most people aren't going to want to load them at all. In this case, you see, same thing I always say at the beginning of these videos, if you don't color by anything, this is what you get. So sort of a bland looking map, and the only thing you can really do is zoom in and see, wow, it's a lot of wells. So probably not that interesting. So I would usually say, first thing if you're examining a basin for the first time, look at the formations, because this gives you some sense of the distribution of types of wells and types of targets that people are going to be pursuing here. And then you can open the sidebar and zoom in on these upper formations. So this will now tell you what the colors mean out here on the map, and it'll also give you a well count. And I can sort it by how common they are so that you get a sense of what is the most common target. In this case, it's the Wolfcamp, and then Bone Spring, and then Delaware, San Andreas, Cherry Canyon, Morrow, Yates, Queen, some other Bone Spring sort of lower units, Grayburg, Seven Rivers, Brushy Canyon, Strawn, Atoka, Devonian, and down from there. But so your primary targets are these Wolfcamp, Bone Spring, Delaware, and San Andreas. So that in itself is already an interesting look and something you can do very quickly. However, we've gone over that in a few other videos, so I want to jump to something else, which is it's very common for someone to send you a well list and say, hey, look at these wells. And so they just send you a list of APIs. So it's important that you know how to load those into our application. In this case, I've got them prepped in a text document, so I can just show you quickly exactly how to do this. So I've saved my list to my clipboard. I go over here to the filter, and I click on API, got this text field, I paste those in, and I hit apply. And that's it. And just like that, I get my 8 U-turn wells that are in Texas. So these dots aren't very big, but one thing you can see is that they're all Wolfcamp. So when everything's just one type, it's more useful to change what you're coloring by. So in this case, I'm going to color by operator, and I'm going to go ahead and size by TD, which will just allow the dots to get a little bit bigger and easier to distinguish. Okay, so that already looks a little better. So you can see Chevron has 5 of these wells, Matador has 2 of them, and Shell has 1 of them. And you can see they're all pretty close to each other. If I zoom out on Texas, they're not that far apart. So they're all targeting the same formation in the same part of Texas. If I select a lasso tool, I can select all of them, and I can then look at the production for all of them. You can see they're pretty new. Let's switch this to date so we can see when they first came online. So one of these was back in 2019. The others were just this year. So they're all relatively new. So let's shut that down. So the next thing you want to do is sort of figure out what is a U-turn well, because I've talked about it and described it, but now I want to show it to you. So I'm going to take the top one here. I'm going to focus on it, which gathers all the information it needs to build a subsurface plot of this particular well. So I do that, I click subsurface, and just like that, now you get to see what a U-turn well looks like. So they drill down, they turn, they go out for a mile, they turn, and they come back for a mile. So it's a pretty interesting concept. We have over here sort of a side view, and then one thing that for me is the big question is, how do you make a gun barrel from this? You can see a gun barrel is not populated because I'm not exactly sure what to do with these yet. According to the completions report, which I'm going to show you real quick, so this is what Texas actually distributes. If you want completions data from Texas, this is how you're going to get it. They're in these PDFs. These forms have things like the API, the field, the gas ID, when it was drilled, depth, a lot of information, but it's in this PDF form. So we have to take these PDFs, deconstruct them, and turn them into usable data so we can plot them on a website. And I can tell you that takes a very long time. It's a difficult thing to do, but that's what we've done. One of the key things that you're going to get out of the completion report is the interval that they are completing. So in this case, they go from 11,000 feet, 11,020, down to 21,976, which is just short of the total depth. But you notice there's only one completion interval, and that suggests that they are completing all of it, all the way from the toe of the well all the way back to the heel. And I'm not sure that's true. I kind of think they probably aren't actually completing this U-turn portion of it. They're probably completing each of these legs independently. And if that's the case, we could break this into 2 legs, and then we could plot 2 dots next to each other. We could get spacing and do our gun barrels in the normal way. If there is just one completion interval and they complete this rounded portion, then we end up with 1 dot in the middle, and you'd have these 2 legs off to the side, but you can't really show those, and you can't really get the spacing because you can't get the spacing between these 2 legs because it's all 1 dot. So I'm asking people right now, including anybody watching this video, to tell me, if you know, how are these completed? Should we stop the completion interval here right before it turns and start it again here and treat this as 2 legs, or do we treat it as 1? And this is a serious question. I really do need an answer to this. But that's the basics. That is a look at the Permian Basin. That is a quick glimpse into, sorry, sometimes I forget I'm on 2 different monitors here. And it's a glimpse into what a U-turn well is. It's also a look at how to load in an API list and drill down to these wells. If you know which wells you're going for, it's real easy to get there. And I can tell you there's one other thing. We've added a designation for multi-wells. It's another directional option. So we have horizontal wells and U-turn wells. And so in this case, if I wanted to get to these same 8 wells, I wouldn't have to necessarily use the API list. I could just choose, show me all these U-turn wells. So I'm pretty sure we're the only one with that designation at this point, so that's kind of cool. And then just a reminder, there's also a table over here that you can look at for more information on all of these wells. And another really cool thing I haven't shown yet is there's a link. So if you click on the link, it'll take you to the state website for this well, and you can explore some of the data yourself. So this is where not all of the data, but most of the data comes from this state website. And so you can kind of see, sort of go back to the source if you want to, and really dive in a little deeper. You can look at completions reports, permits. There's a lot you can do with this, and we try to make that as easy as possible so that if you have to leave our website to go get more information, we might as well be the ones who take you there. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up, and I'm going to say cheers. Until next time.